"Please come with me. My children need a mother," the cowboy said when he found her hiding in his barn. The night was cold and quiet, the kind of night where even the wind seemed tired. The small ranch sat far from town, surrounded by open land and old wooden fences. The barn stood a short distance from the house, its doors slightly open, creaking softly as the wind passed through. Inside, the smell of hay and earth filled the air. No one was supposed to be there. The cowboy arrived late that night. His day had been long and heavy. From sunrise to sunset, he had worked the land, fixed broken fences, fed the animals, and handled everything alone. Life had not been easy since his wife passed away. Every task reminded him that he was the only adult left in the house. Still, he pushed forward because his children depended on him. He led his horse toward the stable, speaking softly to calm it. As he stepped inside the barn, something felt off. The air was different, tense in a way he could not explain. The horse suddenly stopped walking and snorted quietly. The cowboy frowned and looked around. That was when he heard it, a soft movement, almost like someone shifting their weight. His hand tightened around the lantern. He raised it higher, letting the light spread across the barn. The hay bales cast long shadows. For a moment, he thought maybe a wild animal had wandered in. But then he saw her. She was crouched behind a stack of hay, her body pulled inward as if she was trying to disappear. Her clothes were dusty and worn, her hair messy and tangled. Her face was pale and her eyes were wide with fear. She looked like someone who had been running for a long time and had finally collapsed. The cowboy froze. He did not reach for any weapon. He did not shout. He simply stood there, surprised and unsure. He had never expected to find a person hiding in his barn, especially not a woman who looked so broken. She flinched when the light touched her face. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm not stealing. I just needed a place to hide. I'll leave, I promise." Her words came fast, as if she had practiced them many times before. The cowboy noticed how her hands trembled and how her shoulders stayed tense, ready to run at any second. "Easy," he said calmly. His voice was deep but gentle. "I'm not here to hurt you." She did not move. She watched him closely, like a wounded animal unsure if kindness was real or just another trick. He slowly set the lantern down on a wooden crate so the light was softer. "You look cold," he said. "Have you eaten?" That question seemed to surprise her. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I'm fine," she lied, but her stomach made a quiet sound that betrayed her. The cowboy sighed quietly. He had seen hardship before. Ranch life taught people to read signs without words. He could tell she had nowhere to go. "My house is over there," he said, pointing toward the distant porch light. "I've got food, you can warm up." She stared at him, disbelief written across her face. "Why?" she asked. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to," he replied. Anyone hiding in a barn at night probably needs help. Tears filled her eyes, though she tried to hide them by turning her face away. She had not expected kindness. Life had taught her to expect the opposite. Slowly, she stood up. Her legs were weak, and she nearly lost her balance. The cowboy stepped forward just enough to steady her without touching her. That small gesture made her breathe a little easier. They walked toward the house in silence. The stars above them were bright, and the land stretched wide and empty. The ranch felt peaceful, almost too peaceful for someone who had lived in constant fear. Inside the house, warmth wrapped around her immediately. The simple living room held worn furniture, family photos, and signs of children's lives. Small shoes by the door, drawings on the fridge, toys tucked into corners. She noticed these things right away. "You have kids," she said softly. "Yes," the cowboy answered. "Two." He handed her a blanket and guided her to a chair. Then he moved to the kitchen and heated some soup. The sound of a spoon against a pot was comforting, normal, something she had not experienced in a long time. As she ate, her hands shook less. The warmth slowly returned to her body. Still, she remained quiet, unsure how much she should say. "My name's not important," she said when he finally sat across from her. "I don't want trouble." "You're not trouble," he replied. "You're just tired." Those words broke something inside her. Tears spilled down her face, silent and heavy. She covered her mouth, embarrassed, but he did not look away. He simply waited, giving her space to feel. After a while, she wiped her eyes. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "I trusted the wrong people. I thought I was safe, and I was. When things fell apart, there was no one left." The cowboy nodded. He understood loss in his own way. "This place saved me once," he said. "When my wife passed, I thought I wouldn't survive it. But the land, the work, my kids, they kept me going." She looked up at him then, really looked. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the strength in his posture, and the sadness he carried without showing it much. "I don't plan to stay," she said quickly. "Just one night. I'll leave in the morning." He did not argue. "You can rest here tonight," he said. "That's all." Later, he showed her a small guest room. It was simple but clean. As she lay down, she stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. For the first time in a long while, she was not afraid to sleep. Down the hall, the cowboy checked on his children. They slept peacefully, unaware of the stranger under their roof. He stood there longer than usual, watching them breathe, thinking about how much they had lost and how hard it had been to fill the emptiness their mother left behind. That night, two lonely lives rested under the same roof, both unaware that this unexpected meeting in a quiet barn was the beginning of something neither of them had been looking for, but both desperately needed. Morning came slowly to the ranch. Soft sunlight slipped through the thin curtains and rested on the wooden floor. Birds chirped outside, and somewhere far off, a cow called out. The woman woke up suddenly, her body tense, her heart beating fast. For a few seconds, she did not know where she was. Then she remembered the barn, the cowboy, the warm soup, and the quiet room. She sat up carefully, expecting fear to return, but instead she felt calm. The room was simple but clean. There was a small table by the window, a folded blanket at the foot of the bed, and a faint smell of fresh coffee drifting in from the kitchen. She rubbed her eyes and took a deep breath. It had been a long time since she woke up without panic. She stepped out of the room slowly, unsure if she should disturb anyone. The hallway led to the kitchen, where the cowboy stood by the stove. He was already dressed for work, wearing an old shirt and boots covered in dust. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Morning," he said, his voice gentle, like he didn't want to scare her away. "Morning," she replied softly. On the table were 3 plates. 2 were smaller, with simple food placed neatly. The third one, larger, was still empty. "My kids will be up soon," he said. "Sit if you want." She hesitated, then sat down. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers tightly locked together. She didn't know what role she played in this house. She didn't want to overstep. Moments later, small footsteps rushed down the hallway. A little boy ran into the kitchen first, his hair messy, his face still half asleep. Behind him came a little girl, rubbing her eyes and holding a stuffed toy. "Dad," the boy said loudly, then stopped when he saw the woman. He stared at her with curiosity, not fear. The girl hid slightly behind her brother, peeking out quietly. "This is a guest," the cowboy said calmly. "She stayed the night." The woman smiled carefully. "Hello," she said. "Are you a teacher?" the boy asked without thinking. She almost laughed, but instead smiled wider. "No. Are you staying?" the girl asked softly. The question hit her harder than expected. She glanced at the cowboy, unsure what to say. "Just for a little while," she answered honestly. Breakfast passed quietly but warmly. The children talked about school, about a calf born nearby, about small things that felt big to them. The woman listened more than she spoke. She watched how the cowboy moved around the kitchen, how he cut bread, poured milk, and reminded the kids to eat properly. He did everything with care, even when he looked tired. After breakfast, the children got ready for school. The cowboy walked them to the bus stop at the edge of the property. The woman watched from the porch, wrapping the borrowed sweater tighter around herself. She noticed how the children waved again and again before the bus pulled away. They missed their mother, the cowboy said quietly when he returned. She nodded. I can tell. She passed away 2 years ago, he continued. It's been hard. I'm sorry, she said sincerely. He gave a small nod. Life doesn't always ask before it takes. The rest of the morning passed slowly. The woman offered to help, unsure if she should. The cowboy accepted without hesitation. She helped clean, fold clothes, and even carried small tools as he worked near the house. She wasn't used to staying in one place, but the simple tasks made her feel useful again. As they worked, silence often filled the space between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt honest. Later, they sat on the porch steps, watching clouds drift across the sky. The cowboy took off his hat and wiped sweat from his forehead. You don't have to tell me anything, he said suddenly, but if you want to, I'll listen. She looked down at her hands. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then words slowly found their way out. I trusted someone I shouldn't have, she began. I thought love meant safety. I was wrong. When things fell apart, I lost my home, my job, my confidence. I kept moving, thinking the next place would be better. It never was. Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes filled with tears. I ended up hiding instead of living, she continued. That barn last night, it wasn't the first place I hid, just the quietest. The cowboy listened carefully, never interrupting. I didn't plan to survive like this, she finished. But somehow I did, he nodded slowly. Surviving takes strength, he said, even when it doesn't feel like it. She looked at him, surprised. No one had ever said that to her before. In the afternoon, the cowboy had to check the far fence. He asked if she wanted to stay or come along. She chose to stay, wanting to prove she could be trusted. He left her with a quiet house and a sense of responsibility. She cleaned the kitchen again, then stood by the window, watching the land stretch endlessly. She thought about how peaceful it felt, how different from the noise and fear she was used to. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what staying might feel like. When the children returned home, they ran inside laughing. The woman greeted them at the door, unsure how they would react, but they smiled easily. Dad's not back yet, the boy said. He'll be soon. She helped them with small tasks, listened to their stories, and made simple snacks. It felt natural, like something she had forgotten but never truly lost. When the cowboy returned, he stopped at the doorway and watched for a moment. The children sat at the table talking loudly. The woman laughed softly at something the girl said. The house felt full. That night after the children slept, the cowboy spoke again. You can stay a little longer, he said. If you want, no pressure, she swallowed. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, he replied simply. She nodded, emotions filling her chest. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was sitting at a table in a home with people who didn't ask her to be perfect, only present. And though none of them said it out loud, something quiet and important had already begun. Days passed gently on the ranch, each one bringing a small change. The woman stayed just like she said she would for a little while. At first, she kept her distance, careful not to take up too much space. She woke early, helped where she could, and always asked before doing anything. She did not want to feel like she was stepping into a place that did not belong to her. But the house slowly adjusted to her presence. The children grew used to seeing her in the mornings. They no longer stared with curiosity. Instead, they greeted her with smiles and simple questions. They told her about school, about friends, about things they liked and things they did not. She listened carefully, remembering what each of them said. The boy liked stories about animals and adventure. The girl liked quiet moments, drawing pictures and sitting close when she felt unsure. The woman noticed these things without trying. It came naturally, like breathing. The cowboy watched all of this quietly. He never pushed, never commented much, but he noticed the difference. The house felt lighter, the children laughed more. Even the long evenings felt shorter. One afternoon, rain fell hard and steady. The sky turned gray and the land drank deeply. The cowboy was late coming back from checking the animals. The woman waited with the children, helping them finish homework at the table. When thunder rolled, the girl jumped and moved closer to the woman. Without thinking, the woman wrapped an arm around her shoulders. The girl relaxed immediately, resting her head against her side. "It's okay," the woman whispered, "just noise." The boy looked up. "Mom used to say that." The room went quiet. The woman's heart tightened. She worried she had crossed a line. She looked down at the girl, who seemed calm, then at the boy, who watched her closely. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to." "It's okay," the boy said. "You sound like her." Those words stayed with her long after the rain stopped. That evening, the cowboy came home soaked and tired. The woman handed him a towel without saying a word. He took it, surprised, then nodded in thanks. The children talked loudly about their day, and he listened with a tired smile. After dinner, when the kids were getting ready for bed, the cowboy asked the woman if she would like to sit outside for a moment. The air was cool and fresh after the rain. They sat on the porch steps, the world quiet again. "You've helped a lot," he said carefully. "The kids, they're happier." She looked down. "I don't want to replace anyone," she said quickly. "I know that's not my place." "I know," he replied. "That's not what this is." They sat in silence for a while. The sounds of insects filled the air. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "about how things have been, about how hard it's been to do this alone." She waited, unsure where his words were leading. "My wife was the heart of this family," he continued. "When she passed, everything changed. I tried to be everything at once. I tried to be strong all the time, but the truth is I'm tired." His voice was steady, but there was honesty in it that made her chest ache. "The kids need more than I can give by myself," he said. "They need warmth, patience, someone who listens the way you do." She looked at him, startled. "I'm just helping." "You're doing more than that," he said, "and I don't want to pretend I haven't noticed." She felt a mix of fear and hope rise inside her. She had been afraid this conversation would come, and yet some part of her had expected it. "I don't know how to be that person," she said quietly. "I've made mistakes, big ones. I'm still figuring myself out." "So am I," he replied, "every day." The next few days were heavier. The woman felt more aware of everything she did. She worried about getting too close, about hurting the children if she left. At night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet house. One evening the girl knocked softly on her door. "Can I come in?" she asked. The woman nodded. The girl climbed onto the bed and sat quietly. "I had a bad dream," the girl said. The woman opened her arms without thinking. The girl leaned into her, breathing slowly until she calmed down. "Will you stay?" the girl asked, her voice small. The woman closed her eyes. "I don't know," she answered honestly, "but I'm here right now." That seemed to be enough. The next morning the cowboy found the woman sitting at the table, staring at nothing. He poured coffee and sat across from her. "I don't want to rush you," he said, "and I don't want you to feel trapped." She looked up. "What if I stay and fail?" she asked. "What if I leave and hurt them?" He leaned back, thinking. "Life hurts either way," he said, "but sometimes staying is how we heal." She nodded slowly. That afternoon the children played outside while the adults worked nearby. The boy tripped and scraped his knee. He ran to the woman without thinking, tears in his eyes. She cleaned the scrape gently, speaking softly until he calmed down. The cowboy watched from a distance. Something settled in his chest, heavy and clear. That night, after the children were asleep, he spoke the words he had been holding back. "I don't know what this looks like yet," he said. "I don't know where it leads, but I do know this. My children need a mother figure in their lives. Someone steady, someone kind." She felt her breath catch. "I'm not asking for promises," he continued. "I'm asking if you'd consider staying, not forever, just with us, for now." The room felt still. She thought about the road she had been walking, the places she had hidden, the fear that had guided her steps for so long. Then she thought about the laughter in this house, the small hands that reached for hers without doubt. She looked at him, eyes shining. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I," he said. She took a deep breath. "But maybe being scared doesn't mean we stop." A quiet understanding passed between them. No celebration, no grand words, just a shared decision to take the next step together. Outside, the night stretched wide and open. And inside the house, something fragile but real had been given a chance to grow. The days that followed were filled with mixed emotions. Nothing was clearly decided, yet everything felt different. The woman stayed, but now she stayed with awareness. Every smile from the children felt heavier, every quiet moment more meaningful. She was no longer just passing through. She was choosing, even if she did not fully understand what she was choosing yet. She began waking up earlier than before. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to help make mornings easier. She packed lunches with simple care, folded clothes neatly, and reminded the children about small things they often forgot. She never tried to take control. She only supported. The children responded naturally. They started calling for her when they needed help with homework or when they wanted to show her a drawing. The girl followed her closely, asking questions about everything. The boy tried to act grown, but often looked to her for approval. One afternoon, the girl came home from school quiet and withdrawn. She went straight to her room instead of running outside to play. The woman noticed immediately. She knocked softly on the door. "Can I come in?" The girl nodded from the bed. Her eyes were red. "What happened?" the woman asked gently. The girl hesitated, then said, "Some kids asked why I don't have a mom." The woman sat beside her, feeling the familiar ache of helplessness. "What did you say?" "I didn't say anything," the girl whispered. "I just walked away." The woman took a deep breath. "Sometimes people ask questions they don't understand," she said. "It doesn't mean you did anything wrong." The girl leaned closer. Do you think moms leave because they don't want to stay?" The question struck deep. The woman chose her words carefully. "No," she said. "Sometimes they leave because life takes them away, not because love is gone." The girl nodded slowly, holding onto those words like something fragile. That evening, the cowboy listened as his daughter shared the story. His jaw tightened, not in anger but in pain. After the children went to bed, he sat quietly at the table, staring at his hands. "She shouldn't have to answer those questions alone," he said. The woman sat across from him. "She won't," she replied. He looked up, surprised by the confidence in her voice. Still, doubt followed the woman like a shadow. Late at night, she lay awake thinking about her past. She remembered the mistakes she had made, the trust she had given too easily, the times she had chosen silence instead of speaking up. She wondered if she deserved this second chance. One night, she quietly stepped outside and sat on the porch steps, hugging her knees. The sky was full of stars. The land felt endless, and for the first time in years, she felt small but not lost. The cowboy joined her after a while, sitting a short distance away. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that one day I'll wake up and realize I can't do this. Afraid I'll hurt them." He nodded. "Being afraid means you care," he said. "That counts for something." She turned toward him. "What if caring isn't enough?" "Then we learn," he said, "together." The weeks went on and routine slowly formed. The woman became a steady part of the children's days. She helped with school projects, cooked meals, and listened when they talked about their dreams. She never tried to take the place of someone who was gone. She honored that space while filling another. The boy began to open up more. One night, as they sat on the floor building something from scraps of wood, he asked, "Do you ever feel like you don't fit anywhere?" She smiled sadly. "Yes," she said, "many times." "What do you do then?" "I keep going until I find a place that feels like home," she answered. He thought about that quietly. At school, teachers noticed a change. The children were calmer, more focused. They smiled more. When the school called to say kind words, the cowboy felt something loosen in his chest. But not everything was easy. One afternoon, a woman from town stopped by the ranch. She had known the family for years. Her eyes went from the woman to the children, then back again. "I didn't know you had help now," she said politely, but there was curiosity underneath. The woman felt suddenly exposed. The cowboy stepped in calmly. "She's staying with us," he said. "That's all." The visitor nodded, but the moment stayed with the woman long after she left. She worried about judgment, about whispers, about whether she truly belonged here. That night she almost packed her bag. She stood in the guest room, staring at the small suitcase she had carried for so long. It had been her escape, her safety. She touched the handle, ready to leave quietly before anyone could stop her. Then she heard soft footsteps. The girl stood in the doorway holding her stuffed toy. "Are you going somewhere?" she asked. The woman's throat tightened. "I was just organizing." The girl walked over and hugged her leg. "Please don't go," she said softly. "I feel better when you're here." The woman closed her eyes, tears slipping down her face. She knelt and hugged the girl gently. "I'm here," she said. "I'm not going anywhere tonight." That was the night she unpacked the suitcase. The next morning, she moved her clothes into the closet properly. She placed a small photo from her past on the shelf, not to live there but to remember who she was and how far she had come. The cowboy noticed. He didn't say anything, but his eyes softened. One evening, after the children were asleep, he spoke carefully. "I don't expect you to become everything overnight," he said. "I just want you to know you already matter here." She took a deep breath. "I don't want to be a guest anymore," she said quietly. "I want to try fully," he nodded. "That's all I hoped for." They did not rush into labels or promises. They focused on days, not years, on being present, not perfect. As autumn arrived, the ranch changed colors. Leaves fell, air cooled, and the house felt warmer inside. The woman laughed more easily now. The children trusted without hesitation. The cowboy allowed himself moments of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Fear still visited the woman, but it no longer controlled her. She was learning that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to stay even when fear whispered to leave. And with every passing day, the home they shared became less about what was lost, and more about what was slowly, carefully being built. The woman no longer hesitated before helping. She knew where things belonged, knew which child needed encouragement and which needed space. The house felt lived in again, not just occupied. The children stopped asking if she would leave. Instead, they asked when she would be home. That small shift meant more than any promise. Winter arrived gently. The air grew colder and the nights longer. The ranch looked different under pale skies and soft frost. Inside the house, warmth grew stronger. The woman learned how to cook meals the children liked, and the cowboy learned that he did not have to carry everything alone. One evening, the power went out during a storm. The wind howled and rain tapped hard against the windows. The children gathered in the living room, nervous but trying to be brave. The woman lit candles and told them stories she remembered from her own childhood. Her voice was calm and steady. The children listened closely, wrapped in blankets, their fear fading with every word. The cowboy watched from across the room. He realized then that peace did not always come from big moments. Sometimes it came from simple things done with care. Later that night, when the storm passed and the lights returned, the boy said quietly, "It didn't feel scary." The woman smiled. "That's because you weren't alone." Those words stayed with all of them. As months passed, the woman slowly faced her past without letting it define her. She stopped thinking of herself as someone who had failed and began seeing herself as someone who survived. The ranch gave her purpose, the children gave her reason, and the cowboy gave her respect. They talked more openly now, about worries, about hopes, about the future without pressure. There was no rush. What mattered was trust. One afternoon, the children brought home school papers with smiling faces drawn at the top. Their teacher had written a note praising their progress. The cowboy read it twice, his hands shaking slightly. "They're doing well," he said, his voice thick. "They are," the woman replied. "They always were. They just needed space to breathe. He nodded. So did I. That evening after dinner, they sat together at the table long after the plates were cleared. The children laughed over small jokes. The room felt full, not loud but alive. Later, when the children were asleep, the cowboy spoke softly. "I don't know when it happened," he said, "but this place feels like home again." The woman looked around the room. "It does," she agreed. He hesitated. "I want you to stay. Not just because the kids need you, but because I do too." She took a slow breath. This time fear did not rise, only calm. "I'm not running anymore," she said. "I want to build something real." Spring came early that year. Flowers bloomed near the fence. The land felt fresh again. One morning the woman planted a small garden near the house. The children helped, laughing as they got their hands dirty. "What are we planting?" the girl asked. "New beginnings," the woman replied with a smile. Life did not become perfect. There were still hard days, but they faced them together. When the boy struggled at school, they listened. When the girl felt sad, they held her. When the cowboy felt overwhelmed, he spoke instead of staying silent. The woman no longer felt like a guest. She felt like she belonged. One quiet evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the cowboy stood beside her on the porch. "I asked you once to stay for my children," he said, "but now I'm asking you to stay because you are family." She looked at him, eyes warm. "I already am," she said. They did not need big words or grand plans. What they had was stronger trust, patience, and love built slowly. Years later, the barn still stood where it always had, but it no longer represented fear or hiding. It was just part of the land, part of the story. The woman often thought about that night she had hidden there, cold and broken. She could hardly recognize herself now. Sometimes, life changes when you least expect it, not through loud miracles but through quiet kindness. Through someone opening a door and saying, "You're safe here." And sometimes, the family you never planned for becomes the one that saves you.